go. Welcome to the show, everybody. Wide receiver values. We are going through ADP from basically start to finish. Who are the best values? Who are the worst values at the wide receiver position? We'll tell you right now on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I'm Adam Azer. Happy Friday, everybody. Jamey's here. Heath's here. And guess who's back? Na-na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na-na. Dave Richards back now. Hello, Dave. What's up?
That was cringy. How are you guys? Everybody good? Everybody ready for drafts this weekend?
No. Who's drafting this weekend?
Losers. What do you want to know about the Patriots, Commanders, Titans, and Bucks?
Whatever is relevant during this wide receiver preview. So yesterday we talked overall strategy. We talked about the differences between 2 receiver leagues and 3 receiver leagues. Pretty big difference because we basically said, to sum it up, you know, we like a lot of the receivers in the 30 to 40 range even. You don't want them to be the anchors of your team, but you could, in theory, draft a hero wide receiver strategy and, you know, take guys like Calvin Ridley and, who are some of the names we mentioned? Calvin Ridley.
If you took a receiver in the first 2 rounds, which would be probably toward the back end of the first round, if you're going that way, so you make sure you guarantee yourself somebody through probably Drake London. But if you did get T. Higgins or Tyreek Hill or one of those guys as your first receiver, in any event, you're looking at as your second guys. If you go this route, maybe those round 5, 6 guys of Tedaro McMillan and Jerry Jeudy and George Pickens, those type of guys, Jameson Williams. But I think where you were going was more like Calvin Ridley, Jacoby Myers, Ricky Pearsall, Chris Olave, those type of guys. Matthew Golden maybe now. Some of those high end number 3 receivers comparatively to the low end number 2. But the blob, the guys are in the blob.
Yeah. So anyway, we said you could pull that off, but easier to do in a 2 receiver league than a 3 receiver league. Sorry, I blanked on some of those names. I need the rankings in front of me. So what we'll do today is just go through ADP. We also gave sleepers, breakouts, and busts yesterday. And we ended the show with round 1. We ended the show with basically the top 8 receivers. So we went into round 2 with Brian Thomas Jr. and Nico Collins. We're going to start today with round 2 and basically go through the end of the draft. So we're using Fantasy Pros, full PPR, overall ADP. So let's go. Let's start with the round 2 guys. And we've got Nico Collins and Brian Thomas in round 2. And we think they're very good picks early in round 2. If anybody wants to jump in and disagree with me, go for it. But it gets more interesting after that as we go to 18th overall and A.J. Brown, Drake London, and that's pretty much it. There are no other wide receivers going in round 2. You have in round 3, McConkey, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins. So if we look at those 5 wide receivers, Dave, A.J. Brown, Drake London, and then McConkey, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, are those 2 different tiers? Brown and London, and then the next 3?
I would cram Brown into the top tier. I would put London with Higgins, Brian Thomas Jr. And you know what? That's it. That's the second tier. It's small. It's 3 names. I'm putting Tyreek Hill in the tier after that, and that's also just 3 names. It's Tyreek, it's McConkey, and I have Rashee Rice in this tier, but I'm not drafting him here. I just think that Rashee Rice, once he's back and he's healthy, we're assuming there's a suspension that's baked into the ADP. I think he can be just as productive in full PPR as those guys.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on A.J. Brown, Drake London, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Ladd McConkey?
So I obviously agree with Dave because I have A.J. Brown higher than a lot of the guys we've already talked about. I would put London, Higgins, and Tyreek. I don't have Ladd in that tier anymore. He fell down into the next group with the signing of Keenan Allen, now the loss of Slater. McConkey goes the round 3 tier and really mid to late round 3 tier, not early round 3 for me anymore.
I agree with Heath on the McConkey tier. And you know where I come out on London. I think London belongs in the same tier with A.J. Brown.
London, but do you think A.J. Brown belongs in the same tier as those top 8?
Yeah, like I said yesterday, I think there's 10 elite receivers, with London being the 10th. So I would say London, A.J. Brown are in, wherever you want to separate those guys. I don't think we need to go into those semantics, but I would say Tyreek and Higgins are in a tier by themselves, kind of what Heath was getting to. And then it's that next group, which we'll talk about, where McConkey's now slid into, where I have him behind Devontae Adams, JSN, and Garrett Wilson.
And I think it's worth mentioning that T was better than a lot of the guys we're putting in the elite tier, or at least a few of the guys that we're putting in the elite tier this year. T was better than them on a per game basis last year. And he has missed. I took a look yesterday at kind of my top 12 wide receivers, and just thinking about the Nico Collins situation and how much time he's missed. There are 2 wide receivers in my top 12 that have played less than 80% of their team's games over the last 3 years. Oddly, I was surprised to see T's played more than Nico has, but T's at 78%, Nico's at 72%. And so I think, like, obviously that injury risk gets factored into T's ADP. If we weren't worried about that after what we just saw last year, I think he might be up even higher.
Is it just that, or could it also be that we're not believers that T. Higgins can be as good as he was last year?
Mhm.
Because, I mean, almost 30% of his production came from touchdowns. It was a huge number. We know what he's capable of doing. We know what this offense is capable of doing. It's just a matter of, well, can he be over 18 PPR points per game again? Or is it going to fall into like that 17, 16 and a half point range?
No, less. I mean,
well,
I
I mean, that's where he's been. I
That's
think
where he's
he's going to be somewhere in between where he's been and what he was last year in a contract year.
you know, I give those stats about Joe Burrow, what he's been on pace for in 3 of the last 4 seasons when he, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase have all been healthy. And if you've missed them, and this must be your first episode then. Joe Burrow's been on pace for 4,950 or more yards in 2021, 2022, and 2024 with a healthy Higgins and Chase, and at least 35 touchdown pace. In fact, more than 40 touchdowns in 2 of those 3 seasons. 2023 was just a horrible season for the Bengals offense, like bunch of injuries, and it just doesn't fit. But Higgins, what has he been on pace for in those 2021, 2022, 2024 seasons when everyone's been healthy? 15.6 PPR fantasy points, 16 PPR fantasy points, and last year it was 18.6 PPR fantasy points. So the first 2 of those samples, he was wide receiver. You know, look at those points per game. That's wide receiver 13 per game, and that kind of feels like the floor for Higgins. Wide receiver 13. I think that makes him a great pick in round 3, which is where he's going. But obviously, I don't know if the ceiling is really wide receiver 5 per game. That's what he was last year, but it happened. So he could outperform the ADP. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be any lower than 15. I mean, be surprising.
Shouldn't be.
Okay, and then there's Tyreek Hill, which is he's just wild. So how are we feeling about Tyreek Hill? Jamey, you're comfortable taking him in the 2nd round. And are you also comfortable taking Higgins in the 2nd round?
Yes, for both those guys. And I think, format matters, 2 receiver league versus 3 receiver league, and what you do in round 1. Clearly, if you take a running back, it's easy to take those guys in round 2. If you don't want to take running back. But yes, I think Tyreek's upside, how much of last year was 6 games without Tua Tagovailoa, the wrist injury, the change in somewhat philosophy. If that carries over to this year, we'll find out. But Jonnu Smith's emergence. So there's a lot to like about Tyreek's situation. I, don't like the fact that he's banged up right now, so he's not taking part in joint practices with Chicago. We'll see how much of that is just maintenance or actually a legit injury to worry about, because it didn't pop up until they went to Chicago that he's, dealing with something. So I'm not worried about some of the stupid stuff that's been said. The Devon Achane comments. I think the Dolphins purposely try to troll the media, which I think hurts their football product more so than them having fun with it. But as long as his head is focused, and I think the fact that he has talked about the comments at the end of last season and then what Tua said at the start of training camp, the fact that he came in better shape, I think he realizes like this is his last hurrah if he's going to have a shot to, do something special personally and maybe for the team. So I'll buy into what he still can be. I'm not expecting 20 plus points per game. Otherwise, he'd be a round 1 pick. But I think he can be in that 17 to 18 point per game range, which is why I'll take him back into round 2.
Dave, then Heath. When would you take Tyreek Hill?
Pretty close to where Jamey's taking him. I think I have him 25th now. I moved the tight ends ahead of him because I think you described him the perfect way, Adam. He's a total wild card. We know what the upside is. We know what the downside is. Here's a question. Is the downside what he did in 10 games with Tua starting and finishing? So that's week 1, weeks 8 through 16. This is last year. It was almost 16 PPR points per game. 15.8 is the actual number. I want to draft him like that's what I'm going to get. And if someone else in my league is more excited about him, then by all means, go and get him. I don't like that he's sitting out in Chicago. I don't like that Tua keeps talking about the hubbub at the end of last season. I don't like that I went to practice and I saw Jalen Waddle get way more targets than Tyreek Hill. And I've heard from other people who have gone to Dolphins practice and they've said the exact same thing. And I know, yeah, he's fast. He's certainly, that's not an issue in my mind. But if he's banged up, and we know that he was banged up last year, and we don't know for sure what this Dolphins offense is really going to look like, I would be a little hesitant with Tyreek Hill. The problem is that how many other receivers are out there that you can look at and say, oh yeah, slam dunk, they're going to be over 16 PPR points per game. I'm sure you guys talked about this yesterday, but there is just this huge cliff between like the top 10, 11 guys and everybody else in fantasy. And so that also makes me nervous, but I know that Tyreek Hill just has upside that no one at the 2-3 turn or later has.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would take T before Tyreek, and I've got Tyreek 25 also. I don't think the floor is the 15.8 fantasy points per game we saw last year because of all the other stuff. It just feels like he has the risk of implosion more than the other wide receivers that are being drafted ahead of him.
Totally fair. Heath, his number last year, including every game, was 12.8 in PPR. Is that
I don't think
the floor?
I don't think it's a point per game floor when you're talking about Tyreek. I think it's a risk of catastrophe, either because he's 31 years old or because he's been banged up the last 2 years or because something off the field causes catastrophe.
Okay. So that's the surefire round 2 guys, AJ Brown and Drake London. The next 2, we're comfortable taking T. Higgins in round 2, Tyreek Hill. You heard Jamey's definitely okay with it. Dave has him 25th. Heath a little hesitant, but Heath has him as wide receiver 12. So you could see those guys going round 2. You could have seen Ladd McConkey going round 2. According to what we just heard from Jamey and Heath, I don't know if Dave gave an opinion on that. They're not going to do that at this point with Rashawn Slater out for the season, the left tackle. I gave some stats on the Chargers offense on the Mailbag show, which we recorded last night and we'll publish on Saturday in audio about 2022, I believe, when Rashawn Slater played only 3 games. And last year when he missed 3 games. And it seemed to have a bigger effect on the run game than the pass game. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, please use the bonus code FANTASY. And you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. And here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app, sign up, use the bonus code FANTASY, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. And you're going to receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. All right, so on to round 3. So we'll start with McConkey. And so now he's in a different tier because of the recent developments, Keenan Allen signing. Although, I guess my first question is like, really? Which I'm not saying I disagree, but it has to be asked. Like Keenan Allen's 33, coming off his worst season. So just address it again. I think we did a few days ago. Address it again. You got McConkey. We're going to ignore Tyreek Hill and T. Higgins because we consider them ahead of this group. We're going to say JSN. And I guess I'll throw Garrett Wilson in there. Devontae Adams goes into round 4. But if we look at McConkey, JSN, and Garrett Wilson, Heath, your thoughts?
Yeah, McConkey and JSN are the 2 wide receivers that I feel comfortable. And Tyreek, that I feel comfortable drafting in round 3. I think I may have McLaurin at 36 or 37, and Adams right there, and Sutton right there. But I only have really those 2 guys as surefire round 3 picks. I talked about it yesterday. Garrett Wilson, I think, has the talent to be drafted there. And if you want to just bet on the upside and the potential, we've done that a couple of times, and it worked out for about half a year last year. I just worry that the pass volume is so low for the Jets that even if Wilson gets 30% of the targets, it's not enough to justify this, especially because the pass touchdowns will probably be really low too.
Do you know what the over-under is for Garrett Wilson touchdowns this year?
I'd guess 6.5.
4.5.
4.5.
Yeah. And I think it's, it's worth noting that I've given this stat too. Over the last 12 seasons, 6 wide receivers have finished top 12 in PPR and half PPR and have been on bottom 5 pass attempt offenses. And you've got, I don't know, maybe 3 possibilities here with Ladd McConkey, Jackson Smith and Jigba. That would surprise me. I don't think they'll be bottom 5, and Garrett Wilson. So it's possible.
Have you extended that to top 15 or top 20?
Top 15, you don't even have to worry about that. Like, yeah, they absolutely could be top 16. There's over the last 12 seasons, there have been 16 wide receivers who finished top 16 on an offense that's been bottom 5 in pass attempts. Top 20, you don't even have to worry about that. But if you want them to be top 12, it's going to be tough.
Okay.
But that's not to say that the Chargers, Jets, and Seahawks are definitely going to be bottom 5 in pass attempts.
I think the Jets is the easy one to say yes. Like if you're betting on any of those teams, dude, being there, that'd be the easy one to put your money on.
All 3 of those coaches would love it if those teams were like bottom 5 in pass rate.
One of the receivers
we've already talked about one wide receiver ahead of these guys. That's probably going to be bottom 5 in pass rate, and AJ Brown and Lamar.
No, but pass attempts, because the Eagles were 21st, 23rd, and 32nd in 3 seasons with AJ Brown. Go ahead, Heath.
And then Lamar, the Ravens are definitely going to be one of the bottom 5. So not all these guys probably won't be. I think the one that worries me the most, because Ladd McConkey might be in a bottom 5 pass attempt offense, but he also has the most accurate passer of the group.
Mm-hmm. So the one that worries you the most is Wilson?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then do you guys take Devontae Adams ahead of all of these guys?
Yes.
I've got JSN and McConkey over Devontae.
I do not have any Devontae. I had Devontae ahead of Wilson, but not the other 2.
Right.
Okay. So if we were looking at consensus, then McConkey and JSN, McConkey, Adams, JSN, Wilson is how it is in consensus. But you have to look at each individual guy here, Dave, Jamey, Heath, and their rankings and see how they have it. But we can call this a 4-person tier: Adams, JSN, Wilson, McConkey.
It is for me. Yes.
Ideally, this is our wide receiver 2. We'd love to get a stud wide receiver before this. And
I will say just about McConkey, like it's clearly a wild card at this point about who's going to be the slot receiver for the Chargers, or the dominant slot receiver for the Chargers. Clearly that was McConkey last year. It's obviously been something Allen's done with this quarterback, not necessarily with this coaching staff. And so last year he played a good amount of time in the slot, as you would expect for the Bears, but he has shown the ability to play outside. And what you've heard so far, at least from the general manager for the Chargers, is they're going to mix and match both these guys. McConkey can still win on the outside. That's not to say that this is a crushing situation for his fantasy value. I think if that was the case, we probably all would downgrade him completely. But I think when you start to factor in maybe just a better receiving core as a whole, because of what Trey Harris can do and what maybe the combination of Quentin Johnston, who finished last year, I think stronger than people realize. And, just to put some context to it, like we sit here and say to some degree, well, Marvin Harrison scored 8 touchdowns last year. Well, so did Quentin Johnston. That kind of gets overlooked a little bit, that he was, did a good job finding the end zone. And now the addition of Keenan Allen. And I think to your point, Adam, I know the way you framed it, but yes, he's a 33-year-old receiver. And yes, he's coming off matching his worst year of his career, points per game wise. The fact that he went back to this team and this quarterback makes it a little troubling for everybody else there. So again, however you want to view McConkey, I don't have a problem. You still value him as a round 2 pick and think he's still going to be great. And I hope that's the case, because again, he still may be their predominant slot receiver, but now there's more competition for targets than there was last year. And to me, I think comparing him to guys that have similar ranges of outcomes with JSN and Adams and Garrett Wilson.
For what it's worth, Ladd McConkey, when he was lined up out wide, had even better yard per route run numbers than when he was in the slot. He was top 7. Actually, when he was specifically out wide, he had the 4th highest yards per route run in the NFL.
That
he
includes
was
the playoffs or just the regular season?
No, just the regular season. It was
That makes
Puka,
it even more impressive. Okay.
Puka, AJ Brown, Nico Collins, Lad McConkey, lined up out wide, yards per route run leaders. Amazing.
How far did you guys move him down?
I moved him down from wide receiver 13 to wide receiver 16.
He was already wide receiver 13 for me. I moved him down from the 2-3 turn to middle late round 3.
Okay. I moved him down one whole spot.
If he's really going to go late round 3, then then it becomes, do you take this group that we talked about over guys like Ken Walker and Alvin Kamara, Omarion Hampton, the running backs who are going to be in this range, the quarterbacks, probably not Allen or Jackson, but maybe Daniels, Hurts, Burrow for sure, George Kittle. I'll ask you that, this group of wide receivers versus a different position when we come back from this break on Fantasy Football Today. All right, folks, welcome back. So the question that we left off on was this group of 4 receivers: Lad McConkey, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, and Devontae Adams. Jamey, do you like those guys, or do you take a running back? Do you take a different position there if we're talking mid to late round 3?
For me, it would totally depend on how you started your team. So not to take the easy way out, but I think it depends on what you need at this point. I think in a vacuum, I would prefer the receivers over the running backs, especially Walker's already battling or had some, foot concerns. And the other guys you listed, he's really the only one that I would consider. But, I would take him over Hampton. I would take him over Kamara. I would take him over all those running backs for sure. So that whole group of receivers, just in a vacuum. The quarterbacks, same situation. But I think if you needed a running back, I'd consider Walker and then forget about the rest.
Yeah, Walker's the only running back I would take over these guys. I would take the top 3 quarterbacks.
And I split this group of 4 up. I still think that McConkey and JSN have a little bit more upside in full PPR than Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson do. Maybe the better way to say that is that I think Adams and Wilson have more downside. Let me say it that way. Adams and Wilson, I think, have a little bit more downside in full PPR than JSN and McConkey do. So there's a gap between those groups of 2 receivers, and that's where I'd slide all 3 of those quarterbacks: Allen, Jackson, Daniels. It's where I'd slide Walker, Hampton, Kamara. That's not the order I have them in. James Cook is in that group. But to me, I value the younger guys more than the older guys. I'm calling Garrett Wilson an older guy. I should be whipped for that, but he's in that group of guys that have a lower floor.
I just want to say, I look at JSN, and I know we're concerned about maybe Cooper Kupp being there. JSN's another guy who's had success when he's lined up out wide. That's been pretty rare, but he's almost always in the slot. Cooper Kupp has played 9, 12, and 12 games in his last 3 seasons. He is 32 years old. His numbers are getting worse. Even if he misses, if he misses 4 games, those could be just huge games for JSN. So I'll go out on a limb. I love JSN if I can get him 34th overall, which is where he's going. That's like an automatic pick for me.
Yep. I'm a little bit ahead of that. I think he's a top 30 player. We saw it last year when DK got hurt. I want to give the exact number. Give me a second. 17.7 PPR points per game from week 8 on. DK is on a different team. I know it's a different quarterback, and I know that the Seahawks say that they want to run the football, and they should be better at running the football. Just because Ken Walker's hurt doesn't mean that they're going to give up on running the football. We all know that Zach Charbonnet is behind him. Charbonnet might even be the better fit. I say that every time we talk about these running backs. There is no better receiver on this team than Jackson Smith-Njigba. And there's a trend that I think we're going to get in the NFL. This applies to the Chargers. This applies to a lot of teams. Guys that are slot oriented, meaning either they've played in the slot a long time or they're so shifty in their routes that they seem like good slot receivers. They're going to start to play on the field at the same time, and they might both be in the slot at the same time, or they'll line up wide and they'll just run an inside breaking route. And teams are going to take advantage of that route running, that agility. And then all these guys have great hands too. I think that JSN is still going to dominate targets, and the contingency upside of Cooper Kupp missing time and a further uptick in targets for Jackson Smith and Jigba just get me really excited about him in full PPR. Much less excited in non-PPR. I need those catches to mean something for JSN to be a top 30 pick.
I've separated JSN and Cup even more, but I do think that the loss of DK could be entirely made up for in terms of target volume by Cup. I mean, Cup played in an offense that threw 34 fewer times than the Seahawks last year and only played 12 games. And he had 8 fewer targets than DK last year. He's always been a much higher target guy that DK has. So I just worry they threw 593 passes in Seattle last year.
Mm-hmm.
That might go down by 4 a game. And they might be less accurate if Sam Darnold was just a creation of Kevin O'Connell last year. So I think JSN is going to be the best wide receiver on the team, but it might not be 137 targets like he had last year.
Okay. Into round 4. Here we go. So Devontae Adams is in round 4. But let's see. Who else we got? We got Terry McLaurin. We've got Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's pretty much it. The wide receivers are going to start flying off the board beginning in round 5, basically. But Terry McLaurin and Marvin Harrison Jr. Jamey, who do you prefer?
Well, Mike Evans based on ADP.
Evans, very sorry. Evans is there. Yep, go ahead.
Of those guys right now, I prefer Harrison. The longer it seems as if Godwin's going to miss, I would prefer Evans. But both of them make me nervous for different reasons. I would not touch Terry McLaurin at all right now in this range. So I'll let somebody else draft him. But in terms of the 3 of them, this is where we start to see the drop off. Dave alluded to this earlier. So once we get past, I think the JSN Adams group in terms of ADP, there's reason for concern, which is why I think you want to try and get 2 of those guys if you can of the previous group, the previous 16. So McLaurin with the hold in, and the expected touchdown regression that's coming, I won't touch him here. Evans, I think when everybody's healthy, is not going to produce at this level. I would drop him around at least if Godwin were to be able to play early in the season, which at this point we don't know. And then Harrison, I think there's still immense upside, but clearly he's got to do a lot of different things that he did last year. I think he will. I think some of the things that we're seeing will help him and hearing that will help him, but it's just how much do you want to buy into it? So to me, he's closer to where Metcalf and Sutton are versus where he is right now.
Heath, your thoughts on these 3, McLaurin, Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr. in round 4?
Well, I have, I think 6 or 7 wide receivers in round 4, and Terry McLaurin's the only one of the 3 we're talking about. Evans, I like just a little bit later. Like I think I'm 49th. So if you took him in round 4, it's not the worst, but I do worry about the age. I worry about the target competition. I think the Harrison thing, if you want to bet on the player, it's kind of like Garrett Wilson. If you just want to bet on the player that you think is really good, I just haven't seen anything to suggest that this offense is changing in a way that's going to make him more valuable in PPR leagues. So I'm not taking Marvin Harrison this early. I haven't really downgraded Terry McLaurin that much yet because of the holdout. I think it's too early. I still expect he's going to play for the Commanders. There is going to be touchdown regression, but I think even with touchdown regression, he's a fine pick in round 4.
And Dave, your quick rundown of those 3, McLaurin, Evans, Harrison.
Not sure how quick this is going to be. Evans, if you just saw him practicing and running around in practice against the Titans, and it's the Titans, you would have guessed he's 28. He looked great, separating like crazy, on the same page as Baker Mayfield. I'm nervous I have him too low, and I have him at 43rd overall. Marvin Harrison Jr., every single highlight gets people excited. If he's got his timing and rhythm down with Kyler Murray, we all have him too low. And I've got him at 42. I've got him ahead of Mike Evans, but I'm starting to get the idea of targeting these guys because I think that they can give us like a floor of 14 PPR points per game. But the ceiling, we know what the ceiling is with Mike Evans. We saw it last year, especially once Godwin went down. Marvin Harrison, if he just, has better metrics basically, and maybe an uptick in targets, dude, he could be a top 12 receiver. No questions asked. Maybe return the value of where we were drafting him last year. McLaurin in Washington, they need him badly. They especially need him in the red zone. I don't know if they've got a receiver that can really do what he does. they're using Debo in the slot more than anything else. And I think this offense just isn't quite the same without McLaurin there. I agree with Heath. I think the solution will come eventually. I just hope that it doesn't come too late in the preseason where McLaurin suffers from not being in camp, not being in game shape, getting off to a slow start. Maybe he has an injury. Like there are all kinds of issues that could come up because he's not routinely practicing with the Commanders. So he's out of round 4 for me. Harrison and Evans, they are right behind Devontae and Garrett Wilson in my rankings. And I can't rule out moving one or both of them ahead of at least Garrett Wilson because of the upside that they deliver. And just watching Mike Evans in person really made a difference for me.
Evans was so good last year, Ben. And the thing is, we do fall back on this issue of Mike Evans was wide receiver 23 per game in the first 6 games of the season, 21 per game in half PPR, 23 per game in full PPR. And his pace was 71 catches, 878 yards, and 14 touchdowns. He was on pace for 14 touchdowns, and he still was only wide receiver 23 per game, and because he was on pace for 119 targets. He did have 8 end zone targets, though. But I made this point on the mailbag, make it now, he had 3 games with more than 20 fantasy points, and he had 3 duds. One of the duds is kind of hard to explain, just a bad game. One of the duds was against Patrick Surtain. One of the duds was against the Saints, and he is never good against the Saints. So I'll let you listeners decide how you feel about that. But you could look at that as kind of an excuse. But for Evan struggling in those first 6 games, struggling is a relative term. He's wide receiver 23 per game in full PPR, which is his worst format.
But if we're drafting him as wide receiver 18 or wide receiver 20 and he finishes as wide receiver 23, it's not great. We wouldn't be happy, but it's not the end of the world. I feel like we're drafting Evans much closer to his floor than his ceiling. And those are the players that I'm always trying to get.
I think the one thing just to keep in mind is that those first 6 games, while 3 were good and 3 were duds, we now have the most competition for targets that he's ever faced.
Yes.
Because if Ibuka is as good as everybody says, and all you hear from everybody that is around Tampa's team and that has seen them play and has talked to their personnel and players, they just rave about this kid.
It's true.
And we know what Godwin was last year. And if he's healthy, he's going to be a problem. Whatever level you think Godwin's going to play at, he's going to be a problem for Evans. And so to get to his ceiling again, I think is just a little bit harder. So I don't think, and I think this is where, Dave's evaluation is right. Like, I don't think this is a Evans is slowing down situation.
No way.
Because of his age. I mean, that may happen at some point during the season. We'll see. But it's just there's so many mouths to feed in this offense, especially if Bucky's going to be better based on what he did a year ago and the run game's better. And now you have to factor in some of the downside for Tampa, which we talked about with the quarterbacks preview. Like, I know you guys are concerned to a degree about Baker and the regression coming there. You have Tristan Wirfs, who knows how long he's going to be out. So the protection and the line may not be as good. And so let's also not forget 32-year-old Mike Evans missed 4 games last year with a hamstring injury. Like, those things don't start to get better over time. Those things start to creep up more over time. So I just think, like, this might be his ceiling. I don't know if this is his floor.
Okay.
You want a hot take?
Real quick, go ahead.
Ibuka is going to be more of a problem for Evans than Godwin will this year.
Okay. All right. So there are 3 wide receivers who are 32 this year. We've talked about 2 of them already. Adams, Evans, Cooper Kupp. 32 is often a fall off a cliff season for wide receivers. Julio Jones was pretty good at 31. He was injured, but he was good when he played. He completely faded after that. Last year alone, Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins, 2 Hall of Famers, they had their worst seasons at age 32. Sometimes it is just a precipitate, like unexpectedly awful year at that age. Not always. There are plenty of examples of great players continuing it, but it's a worrisome. It's at least something that should be on your radar. All right, let's go on to the next group of wide receivers here. After McLaurin, Evans, and Harrison, we get into round 5. We have DJ Moore. Oh man, this round is great. I did a mock draft on the air last night, and I came away with 3 wide receivers in this range, which was great. It was a 10-team league. But it was all right. So this round is DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Devontae Smith, Xavier Worthy, and we'll stop there. And then after that, Zay Flowers, Jamison Williams. We haven't talked about Tedderell McMillan. He could end up being in the 5th round. But DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Devontae Smith, Xavier Worthy, Heath. Do you like this round as much as I do? I actually like some of the guys going after, like Jamison Williams and Tedderell McMillan and Travis Hunter. I just like this range, I guess.
Yeah, I've got Sutton, Metcalf, Moore, and Worthy all in round 4. So I absolutely love those guys, getting them in round 5. I think Sutton's probably the most underrated of the group and should be expected to see 130-ish targets and maybe score 10 touchdowns. Metcalf is a little bit more of a wild card just because of the age of Aaron Rodgers and the run-heavy tendencies of Arthur Smith. But he has big upside if somehow Rodgers just throws to him 10 times a game like he has as wide receiver 1 in the past. Yeah. Worthy, obviously, huge range of outcomes as well, depending on how many games Rashee Rice is suspended. I saw some speculation that the Chiefs are expecting 4 to 6 games for Rice, which I think would mean you're going to feel really good about taking Xavier Worthy in round 5. You may want to take him in round 4. And then the DJ Moore, how many times have we talked about not knowing where the Bears' targets are going to go? Yeah. It's still possible that DJ Moore, like he has been the last 2 years, is the number 1 wide receiver in a Ben Johnson offense. Well, he's been number 1 for the Bears. Now it's in a Ben Johnson offense and just smashes us.
Okay, couple things real quick. Schaefer's pushing back on my Keenan Allen Hall of Fame comment. I stand by it. I think he's going to the Hall of Fame. Let's do this.
One of the hardest positions to figure out who gets in.
I would say probably not at this point.
All right, maybe I'm wrong. But I'll
Chargers Ring of Honor. He's in the Chargers Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Fantasy Hall of Fame.
I think I might be wrong on this one. Damn it. Okay, so we're going to start with DJ Moore. We're going to do rounds 5 and 6 wide receivers, and we're going to do the...
You think DeAndre Hopkins is a Hall of Famer?
Yes. Yeah, I do. We forget how dominant he was. He's one of the only wide receivers actually over the last 10 years or 12 years, I think 12 years, that has finished as wide receiver 1 in fantasy on a team that was bottom 5 in pass attempts. In fact, I think he is the only one to do that, DeAndre Hopkins with Houston.
I think somebody, maybe Schaefer can do this for us, and just get a collection of the names of wide receivers who are eligible and still haven't gotten into the Hall of Fame, because there are just some incredible, especially for these guys that don't win rings. It's really hard.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Andre Johnson did it.
That's the guy I would come back to. I mean, I think he was better than both those guys. Certainly better.
No question.
All right, so we're going to go through the rounds 5 and 6, guys. It's a really exciting group, and I want you to use the I want to draft him-o-meter, just 0 to 10 on how much you want to draft this guy, because while we should go by ADP, we do consider this part of the blob. So, they could go in any order. For example,
how much I want to draft him at ADP or ahead of ADP?
At round 5 or later. I want to draft
pick 48. Okay.
And round 5 or later, I want to draft this guy. 0 to 10, DJ Moore.
7.
At their spot. I'm confused. Like, we want to draft them at their spots or just draft
You're up in round 5, and you tell me how much you want to draft this guy. DJ Moore.
10.
Oh, okay. 7, 8, and 10. Rashee Rice.
4-game suspension or less. 10.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I'm going to say a 5.
You're not getting him if it's a 4-game suspension or less in round 5.
I think if it's 4, this is where he'll go.
Yeah, I think he won't be a top 4-round pick if he's suspended for 1 game, yes, for 2, maybe 2, 3 or 4, I don't know.
No, 4. I think 3 maybe.
That's too much.
Anything under 3, he's going to go in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
First 3 rounds.
Okay, how about DK Metcalf?
10.
8.
Cortland Sutton.
10.
8.
Cortland Sutton in the last 10 games with Bo Nix was over 18 PPR points per game. Like, once Nix figured it out, Sutton was pretty damn good.
How about Devontae Smith?
8.
6.
Yeah, Jamey wants everybody. Jamey, you are the high guy on Devontae Smith. The thing is, we always talk about, well, he doesn't do that well when everyone's healthy, but Goddard's always hurt. Okay.
There's patches in every season where Devontae Smith gets an opportunity to be like a top 15 fantasy receiver, if not higher.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with my narrative of I'm concerned about Barkley, and I think it's going to benefit the passing game. And I think it's going to benefit Devontae Smith and AJ Brown.
They do want to throw more. Like you've heard that from their coaches.
All right. So we got a lot of high numbers here. How about Xavier Worthy in round 5?
So 8. Rice suspended 4 games or less, 10. 4 games or more, 10. 4 games or less, it's probably a 6.
I was going to say 7.
Zay Flowers.
4.
Negative 16.
3.
So Devontae Smith was on pace for 116 targets last year. Zay Flowers was on pace for 121 targets last year if you remove week 18 where he played 20% of the snaps. Even if you don't, he had 116 targets. So that in 17 games, that was the same exact pace as Devontae Smith. And we know Devontae Smith gets more targets when other guys are out. So the production just wasn't as good. Only 4 touchdowns for Zay Flowers. But I do find it interesting that there's that big of a gap for you guys in your excitement to draft Zay Flowers compared to Devontae Smith. And I want to talk about that after we take a commercial break. So we'll finish up rounds 5 and 6, and we'll get to, and always good wide receivers in round 7 through 9. Not just good. Round 7 through 9, we get great wide receivers. We get a lot of busts because it is round 7 through 9, but we get great wide receivers. We got a lot more wonderful names to talk about on FFT. We'll be right back.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Yeah, so we look at Devontae Smith versus Zay Flowers. Smith was on pace for 116 targets. Flowers had exactly 116 targets and included 1 partial game. Smith had more catches or was on pace for more catches. Flowers had him beaten yards a little bit. The difference was touchdowns. Smith was on pace for 10 and Zay Flowers had 4. So should there really be that big of a gap, though, between Devontae Smith and Zay Flowers?
I think there should be, because Devontae Smith still has that contingency upside. What's the contingency upside for Zay Flowers at this point? Like it's got to be not just Derrick Henry misses time, but Mark Andrews has to be out for a while. DeAndre Hopkins has to fizzle out. This is a team in Baltimore. Like, we know their identity. They're definitely not changing it. This team runs the ball. They've always been run heavy, and it's really, really hard for a receiver. I mean, you talked about it, Adam. It's hard for a receiver to put up huge fantasy numbers when they're on a team that's so run heavy, especially when Baltimore. I think they produced 1 wide receiver in the Lamar Jackson era that's averaged more than 13 PPR points per game. And it wasn't Zay Flowers. So I don't want to draft this guy in that same range as Devontae Smith, who is the same type of player, if you ask me. Like, they're both so fast, so small, very shifty. But I like the situation better in Philadelphia, even though Philadelphia last year, they barely ran the football. At least Devontae Smith can get some action in the red zone. Zay Flowers, really, especially inside the 5, just is a total non-factor. Other receivers that we're talking about in this range, easily much more of a factor in the red zone, if not inside the 5.
Okay, so how excited are we then? So Zay Flowers is the one that if you're in round,
I wrote a whole thing on this if you want to read it on CBS about Zay Flowers.
Don't take him in round 5. We're saying.
Yes.
What about Jameson Williams? You heard my wide receiver strategy. I mean, part of it, I think I said, was I want to get Jameson Williams at the 5-6 turn. But Heath, I did a lot of research this morning about the last 3 seasons and the wide receivers drafted in rounds 4 through 6 and the ones that really stood out. And not surprisingly, targets were the biggest factor. There were examples of players who didn't get a lot of targets and just had great years, like Like Jameson Williams last year, he was a later pick, but Jalen Waddle in 2022, Brandon Ayuk in 2023, a couple Terry McLaurin last year. But I am worried that I'm too high on Jameson Williams because he might be great, but he might just not get enough targets to matter. It sounds a lot like Zay Flowers. But anyway, do you think well, you give me you guys your answer. 0 to 10, Jameson Williams in round 5.
5.
7.
8.
Heath, low guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've got him at the 5-6 turn, so I'm much more excited to draft him in round 6. I think, yeah, the targets we are all anticipating to go up. It's how much did the targets go up? If he stays at the same target volume he was at last year, the ceiling may not even be as high as what we saw last year because the efficiency was insane. So it's just, does he go from, what was he, 105 target pace last year to 120 to 115? Like that's going to determine it. I think he's the perfect upside wide receiver 3.
Okay. You're going to get a little bit of rushing from Jameson Williams, and you'll get a little bit of rushing from Zay Flowers, who's rushed for 56 yards 2 straight seasons. So that does help a little bit. All right, next guy is Travis Hunter. Let's say let's stick with round 5. Round 5 for Travis Hunter, 0 to 10. How excited would you be? How happy would you be to get him?
6.
7.
8.
And let's go to round 6. I don't think the rest of these guys are going in round 5. Except, no, that's not true. But I don't think Pickens is. So Pickens in round 6, 0 to 10.
8.
9.
4.
All right, we'll come back to that. Teteroa McMillan in round 6.
10.
10.
8.
Okay, so that's a guy that
Those guys should be. Those are 2 that I like a lot ahead of consensus.
Pickens and McMillan. And is that it, or do we have one more? We have Calvin Ridley.
Round 6.
Yeah, he's going at the 6-7 turn, basically.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
good with that. I'd be like a 6.5.
5-6.
So, Dave, talk about McMillan. We did talk about McMillan a lot yesterday, so briefly on him, but focus on Pickens. We didn't talk much about him as a round 6 pick, George Pickens.
So what I am kind of expecting from the Cowboys this year is a lot of a circus and calamity. I'm not a big believer in the defense. I'm not a big believer in the run game. Those 2 things would lead to the offense having to throw a lot. Dak is back. Hopefully that offensive line does get healthy in time for the start of the season. And I could see this team end up throwing a lot. And Pickens has been a great star in camp. There's been a lot of hype about him. And he's never going to be double teamed. CeeDee Lamb is there. He'll never be the top target getter over the course of the season as long as CeeDee Lamb is there. But there's going to be a few games this year where he'll get more targets than CeeDee. Might be 4, but it's going to happen. But they're both going to get a lot. And that's the point. I think if there's just going to be a lot of volume and he's playing with Dak Prescott instead of Russell Wilson, I think there's and he's playing as the number 2 receiver. I think we can see George Pickens potentially average 14 PPR points per game. And getting that in what round are we in?
6.
Especially with all the other receivers that are going to come off the board after him, I think that's a win. I think he can be a great number 3 receiver, and he might even sneak into the top 24.
Anybody else have anything to say about Pickens or McMillan?
I didn't say a word about McMillan.
Yeah, no, we've covered him a lot. We're getting
Okay.
excited about McMillan.
You should.
round
Absolutely.
5 guy.
McMillan's a top 24 receiver that could easily push to the top 20. I mean, just looking at what his opportunity is in his offense, what he did in college, the way that the draft capital was spent on him, like there's a lot to like, especially if you buy into what Bryce Young did at the end of the season, that this is going to be his go-to guy, and I think it will be. So I would take him ahead of several of the guys here, like, and round 5 I think is a great spot for him.
Okay, so now we go into round 6, and I mean, I kind of have to do a double take to see, or no, we're in round 7, right? We're in round 7, sorry. Do a double take to see Jerry Jeudy here because, we've never made it this far in our drafts. We do, if you go scroll up a little bit, Thomas, I'm sorry, we have Jalen Waddle is the first guy in this range here. So Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Chris Godwin, Chris Olave, and Jordan Addison. That's round 7. And we're up to wide receiver 36. These are wide receivers 32 through 36. And I just looked at football guys, and Jerry Jeudy is going 72nd there too. So Can we just say if you can really get Jerry Jeudy in round 7, you should take him?
100.
Round 6.
He says you should take him in round 6. Would anybody take him in round 5?
In a very heavy receiver league, yes, but I would prefer to get him in round 6.
I would take him in round 5, but you really doesn't seem like you have to unless you're drafting with me. Although there's been a couple of times I've tried to play that game and Schaefer's using my rankings in the mock draft and takes him. It makes me upset. And this is part of the reason I think that if really pay attention to these round 7, round 8 wide receivers, and do you see the potential for these to be number 2 or number 3 wide receivers? Because if you do, it makes the elite quarterbacks, the elite tight ends, and the running back heavy starts more attractive. That hero wide receiver approach. If you think, you know what, I could take Jerry Jeudy in round 6 and Jalen Waddle in round 7, and we haven't even said Jacoby Myers' name yet, I'll be fine with my number 2 and number 3 wide receivers. I want to be elite everywhere else.
I mean, Chris Godwin was the number 3 receiver per game last year. He was amazing. We're going to have an injury doctor on, not next week, but the week after. I wouldn't even mind trying to get him on next week. I want to ask him a lot about Chris Godwin, but yeah, man. I mean, this is an appealing group here. Waddle, top 24 per game in each of the first, is he going to his 5th year or 6th year? Every year but last year for Waddle.
Year 5.
Okay, so each of the first 3 years of his career is top 24 per game in all formats. Then there's Jeudy, then there's Godwin. So, all right, let's do the same exercise.
I think just one thing with Jeudy that I'm so curious about is we saw him take off when Cooper was traded, and clearly the quarterback changed. But the first couple of games, it was Tillman.
It was kind of everyone, wasn't it? Because they were throwing 42 times a game, I think.
Yes, but Tillman was better.
Tillman was better.
What was what week does that start?
Week 7.
That's week 8.
I think week 8 was the quarterback injury. Week 7 was the trade.
Oh, okay. Yep. So Tillman, yeah. Week 7 was Deshaun Watson got hurt in that game. It's 12 targets for Tillman, 6 for Jeudy. And then after that, Jerry Jeudy was the number 3 wide receiver per game from weeks 8 through 15. That's how good he was. He was on pace for 119 catches, 1,909 yards, 7 touchdowns on 168 targets.
Right. This is not to say that Tillman should be drafted ahead of Jeudy. This is not to say that I think Jeudy is not the better of the Browns receivers. I just wonder how it would have looked over the course of the season if Tillman had stayed healthy. Just a small factor.
One more case for Jeudy. Because, again, if you've been listening for months, you've heard me say this. If you're just starting to listen now, you probably haven't. 2022 was actually a really good season for Jerry Jeudy. There were 3 games in 2022 where he played 1%, 14%, and 38% of the snaps, and he had 8 targets in those 3 games. If you take those out, he averaged 15.8 PPR fantasy points per game that year. And they were the lowest scoring team in football, by the way, which is kind of what you're expecting for the Browns. That was with Denver. And he basically started the year second fiddle to Sutton, and then he took over and was better than Sutton in the second half of the season. So he is not necessarily a one-year wonder. Heath, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that I really think we have to qualify our expectations for the Browns offense and separate it based on, and as long as Joe Flacco is starting and after somebody else starts, because I don't expect them to be one of the lowest scoring offenses in football when Joe Flacco's quarterback. I think they might be when someone else is. But I think there's as much as Joe Flacco's not like maybe going to help them win games, although he might win a couple, and I think they're only 5.5 point underdogs to the Bengals in week 1. I think that they will be closer to an average offense in terms of production, even if it's a bunch of garbage time.
Well, then take it like this. He's already played on the worst offense in football and still done very well. Okay, so let's do this exercise. If you can get these guys in round 7, 0 to 10, how likely are you to do it? How excited are you to do it? Whatever you want to say. Jalen Waddle.
10.
100.
8.
Okay, and Dave's not even the high guy on Waddle, but we still think round 7 is. Dave's always pointing out Waddle with Achane on the field has been a different player, but round 7's good.
It's not Jerry, it's Achane and Hill. They both have to be on the field.
Yeah. Jeudy, we'll just say a 10, right?
200.
Chris Godwin.
5.
Yeah, like a 6 max.
4.
Tough. All right, Chris Olave.
5.
7.
4.
Jordan Addison.
3.
That's a 5.
One of the weird things about Olave last year, because he played only one game, I think, without Derek Carr, and he had a huge game, but Rashid Shaheed didn't play. But when Rashid Shaheed was healthy, Shaheed was out targeting Olave. It was very
Having
strange.
a good camp too,
Shaheed is?
Yeah.
He is.
Put him on the sleepers list, I guess.
for sure.
Yes.
All right, so we said Addison. We're expecting a suspension, but he's Addison's kind of like Jamison Williams, right?
Yeah, but as I pointed out to you last night on the mailbag, you don't have him for 3 games.
Mhm.
Week 4 is Pittsburgh. Tough matchup. Obviously, we don't know how McCarthy will look by then. Week 5 is Cleveland. Week 6 is his bye. You may not feel comfortable playing Jordan Addison until week 7. That's a tough ask.
Good point. All right, let's get to round 8 here. Pretty soon, we're going to see a drop-off in tier, but depends who you ask, because like 2 of the guys that Heath really likes are in this tier, Cooper Kupp and David Njoku. So we've got Romo Dunze.
Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel.
Sorry. Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel. Heath does like David Njoku, and he's going in between those 2 guys. But we've got Romo Dunze to start off round 8, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, Jacoby Myers. We'll end it there. It's not bad. Odunze, Kupp, Deebo Samuel. Terry McLaurin's holding out right now, people. Stephon Diggs and Jacoby Myers. Dave, it's not a bad round. Not a bad round, round 8.
Nope. It's definitely filled with a bunch of wide receivers that you can see the upside for, and the price tag is good and cheap. I don't know if there's not a single one that you named that I would say, too soon. Not one.
How much longer until Emeka Buka is in this group?
He's there for me.
Yeah.
He is for me too. I meant an ADP, but yeah.
Really? I still feel like that's a little rich. Because
Well, he's not. I mean, he's in round 8 for me. He's not. I've got Kupp and Deebo higher than this, but he's right there with Diggs.
I think in terms of Odunze, for example, like you're banking on expectation. You're not banking on certainty. And to me, that's a Buka. Same thing. Like you're hoping that they have a prominent role in this offense. You're hoping that their draft capital shines through. You're hoping that whatever changes may be happening for the Bears, it's a coaching change in offensive line and better quarterback. For the Bucs, it's maybe an injury to arguably their best receiver. So like I'm not drafting either one to be a starter if I don't have to. And in the case of the Bucs offense versus the Bears offense, Odunze, I hope will be better because of his situation, but it wouldn't shock me if Ibuka's better. And so at this point, I'd rather bet on him the longer Godwin misses practice.
This is a group of old school versus new hotness, because Odunze, we've never seen it. We love him. We want to see him break out. Ibuka, obviously a rookie, hoping for a breakout, versus a lot of names of guys who have been around a long time and have been great for fantasy before, but there's issues at play on top of age that kind of keep us from being really excited about any of them.
yeah. So officially, who's your favorite in this group? Odunze, Kupp, Deebo, Diggs, Myers.
I still have a receiver you haven't named yet who's I like better than all these
Dude,
guys.
it's got to be Pearsall, right?
Yeah.
Where the
same.
hell is Ricky Pearsall?
Yeah. Pearsall just continues to rise for me. Absolutely. I worry a little bit about him getting like too steamed up, because it is a 49ers receiver. The same thing that I talked about with Zay Flowers can certainly apply to Ricky Pearsall. But man, what a great start to the season he could have if Jennings is sidelined, and he's clearly the number one. 49ers have a great schedule all year long. Like he could really, I said before, I don't think he could be a breakout. I might eat those words. I might think.
Pearsall is definitely a breakout.
Yeah. I don't know. Can he finish as like a top 15 fantasy wide receiver?
I don't think he has to, especially the fact. Like,
No,
look, we
no,
haven't
I
even got to
agree.
yet.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if he has his best year ever. I think he has a good year with a chance to be even better than that in 2026. I always like to be ahead of those players.
Best year ever is not a big ask. So,
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about like even after this year.
well, I I would hope that he continues to get better. But I think the
he's gonna be better
situation
than
may be the
last
best that he's ever going to face, because the guy that is being paid the most is most likely going to start the season on the pup, if not be ready for the early part of the season. And then you have the other guy who wants to get paid, dealing with a calf injury, most likely, or could just be a hold in, but in any event, not ready to go. And so while the targets may not be what you love, the opportunity is fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's, I guess, move on then a little further down.
To answer the question, Roma Dunze is my favorite from that.
Yeah. Do you guys like Odunze or Pearsall?
Pearsall. And
They
I'll
like
take
Pearsall.
Diggs over Dunze too. Diggs didn't practice much with the first team offense, but every time he was on the field, he was targeted. He looks like he never had an ACL injury. It's really incredible.
I just doubt. It's not personal to you. I doubt the media's ability to truly assess that, or anyone's ability to truly assess that until the games start.
What are you talking about? Assessing his
if a player is fully back.
Well, he can't be fully back if he's not a full-time player in practice. I think just by that notion, you could say that they're kind of, taking it slow with him. And he's 32 years old coming off of a torn ACL. I get it, but that's why we're not drafting him in round 6. That's why this round 8 range is just amazing.
Just to finish off the round 8 range, can I give the Cooper Kupp pace through week 14 last year?
Yeah, everybody get ready to pick your jaw up.
And he only played 9 in the first 14 games, but through week 14, he was on pace, 17-game pace of 171 targets, 119 receptions, 1,241 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Might have been better if he'd just gotten hurt that week and missed the last 3 games, and his value would probably be higher right now. But he played the last 3 games, only got 3 targets in each game, and so maybe that December 9th, he hit the cliff and went over it. Or maybe he's a great value.
I think everybody is avoiding him because he got hurt a bunch, not just last year, but in the years prior, and he's on a different team with a different quarterback. It's an easy.
I think the question will be is, why did he still play as much and not get opportunities?
Yeah,
They ran the ball a lot. They were super run heavy. They, for some reason, just stopped throwing the ball to anyone other than Puka Nacua.
It's just weird to me.
It's very weird. But I think like comparing him to Diggs, who just played 6 games and then tore the ACL and didn't play at all, there seems to be more optimism about Diggs, and I think Kupp's 100% right now.
I think the thing with Diggs, Debo, and Kupp, you have 3 guys on different teams. You have 3 guys coming off of questionable situations, whether it's performance or injury, and you can make the case for and against for all of them. I think if there was everybody all in on all 3 of these guys to whatever degree, like Heath, you're obviously all in for the most part on Kupp and Debo, clearly compared to where they're being drafted. Dave's a little bit more positive on Diggs. I haven't ranked in a similar range, but I'm going to adjust a few things. But in any event, like, you could see it all going bad clearly for all 3 of these guys. Like, Diggs, to your point, Adam, like, we don't know how healthy he actually is. And typically when you see guys come back sooner than expected, something else tends to pop up. Hamstring becomes a problem. Ankle becomes a problem. Like, they compensate for things to make sure that they're, working out their ailment. And then we see these, other things become an issue. I hope that's not the case for Diggs, but how much will he have success playing on the outside? Last year, he was a predominantly slot receiver for the Texans. And will he be that for the Patriots? Doesn't seem that way. So will that be a benefit to him? And then in the case of, Debo, I mean, look, the hold in, hold out track record the last 2 years has not been good for those guys. A lot of it has been injury related. If McLaurin misses any time, like, Debo could be the number 1 guy there, but he also may not be the same guy that he was in years past. And obviously Kupp, as we just sort of alluded to when we were talking about JSN, like, does he even have the ability to stay on the field? And then will he get enough opportunities based on switching teams from where he was in Los Angeles to Seattle?
All right. Next up, we go to round 9, and we've got Khalil Shakir, Juwan Jennings, Matthew Golden, Ricky Pearsall.
That's what I'm getting really excited about too.
Golden?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, man. Pearsall or Golden, who do you like better?
They're going to be back-to-back by the end of the day, ahead of all the old guys for me. So it'll be Pearsall's like wide receiver 34, 35 in that range, and Golden's right there as well.
I've got Pearsall 38, Golden 39, both at the end of round 7.
So does this mean we're out on Jaden Reed?
What round?
He's going in round 10.
Out.
Juwan
round
Jennings.
10's okay.
What round for Juwan Jennings?
Same. 10.
Yeah, 10, 11.
I've got him in 9.
We'll see if there's any more players. But I think when you look at Pearsall and Golden here, and we shouldn't discount Jennings. He's been really good too. I just know he's injured right now. Maybe people look at those guys in round 9 or 10 and say, this is my last chance to get a guy that could really just have this Lad McConkey-esque season. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be that good, but really must start territory. And, you know, a lot of guys that have become must starts are not obvious to us. They just happen, but you could see the reasoning behind it. And we're 45 wide receivers deep when we are saying that. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's scroll down and see who's after Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed's wide receiver 46. Let's keep going down the list here to rounds 11 and later. We got Brandon Ayuk, who's unlikely to be ready for week 1.
You're
got
drafting his name.
Well, I think at this point, if you'd love for Ayuk to go on PUP, right? You get him, you put him on PUP, you get the roster spot back.
Yeah, but I don't want a player like that now. I want a player like that a round or 3 from now.
Okay. Abuka obviously is should not be an 11th round pick. Keon Coleman, exciting.
Did you just get Myers and Shakir?
No, they were back to back. We didn't really talk about them, but Myers and Shakir should be what for your team?
Myers, I think, is in that wide receiver 3 range.
Yep.
I've got him as a mid wide receiver 3. I think I'm not high on him, but Shakir's feels like Myers with an injury currently and probably worse.
Jacoby Myers has been a top 30 wide receiver per game in half and full PPR, 3 straight seasons. It's never been higher than, I want to say, 22, but that's pretty impressive. He's going as something like wide receiver 40. Let's see. So Ayuk, Abuka, Keon Coleman, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney. Definitely some names in here that Jamey likes. I know Abuka everybody likes, but Keon Coleman and Darnell Mooney are going to be on a lot of your teams, right?
Yeah, I think the value for Coleman's great. Just looking at what he can be, especially with Shakir dealing with the ankle injury. It's similar again to what I said about Odunze and Abuka. You're banking on expectation more so than production, but I still just can't get past those 2 games that he had last year before the wrist injury. It seems like things were starting to click, and then he suffers the wrist injury against the Dolphins, and he was just never the same guy. And so you look at this offseason and what they've done. They bring in Josh Palmer as a 30-year-old journeyman. They bring in Elijah Moore, a journeyman. These guys, I think, will fill roles for them, but they don't have the upside that Keon Coleman has. And so he's got a long way to go to be, I think, a fantasy starter, a long way to go to even be somebody you want to say is one of your top reserves. But if you're talking about a 5th receiver, if you're talking about the value of where he is right now, and again, Shakir dealing with an ankle sprain, like there's an easy path to success for him being tied to one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And so they changed last year. The philosophy changed. They don't really need to have an alpha receiver. But I think this is the guy they want to be in that role. Like, I think Shakir is more of a complimentary guy as opposed to a lead guy. Like, this could be a lead guy. I don't know to what extent. I don't think he's going to be a Brian Thomas, a Malik Neighbors, young receiver who can step up and elevate a passing game. But he can certainly be a Jameson Williams type of guy. He doesn't need a lot of targets, can make a lot of plays, different way of doing it. But, still somebody that can be, I think, in that borderline wide receiver 2 range if everything goes right. But again, just almost a free pick in this point of the draft.
Could he be 2024 George Pickens?
Well,
yeah. I mean, it's going to be touchdowns. I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to all of a sudden you're saying, wow, I can't believe Keon Coleman had 100 catches. Like, I don't think that's in his
chance
in his resume on his resume. But like he could be a 70 catch, 1,000-yard, 6-7 touchdown guy. Sure.
Right.
Is anybody drafting a Colts wide receiver? Because Downs and Pittman are both around wide receiver 50.
What round? 11?
12, 11, yeah.
Fallback at best, yeah.
Yeah, Downs is great for the bench in full PPR.
Yep.
Okay.
I like Downs much more than Pittman.
I'll just continue to say I know Darnell Mooney's hurt right now, which is clearly hard to justify drafting him with any level of excitement, but they're going to throw the ball a lot. He's going to be on the field a lot. He was really good last year in a lot of ways, and one really good game with Michael Penix, got hurt in the second one, didn't play in the third one. to me, he's another free space at this point. Like the more he falls, the more excited I get about him.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of that preseason injury because you don't have to start him. You're taking him as wide receiver 50.
Yep.
You don't have to start him right away. Okay, Jaden Higgins. Now we get to some rookies here. Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, got Rashid Shaheed, Marvin Mims, Luther Burden. So in this group of 5 wide receivers, there are 3 rookies. Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, Rashid Shaheed, Marvin Mims, Luther Burden. Heath, do you find yourself drafting any of these guys a lot?
I draft Burden and Shaheed semi-regularly. I've drafted Higgins once or twice, but later than this.
Are we pretty much out on Trey Harris now that they signed Keenan Allen?
I am.
Yeah.
How many rounds are we drafting?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, let's get another round in there.
18 or 19 round draft, then of course Trey will make an appearance. But yeah, I think Keenan Allen's addition crushed every receiver in LA except for McConkey.
Look at those last 4 picks on the list. I want all 4 of those guys.
What, wide receiver or
all 4? Bashal Tootin, Trey Benson, Luther Burden, and Jerome Ford. They're going after 6 kickers. Please give me them all day long.
I'll take Fairbairn. No, just kidding. All right, let's scroll down to the next.
I think Burden to me is.
Okay. Heath. All right, Heath.
I'm gonna try to hit the right button.
You're gonna leave the stream. Don't
FFT Dynasty. 1-man mailbag. 8 minutes. See it.
All right, listen. Check out the FFT Dynasty. All right, let's finish up here. We got.
Hey, did it right.
Wide receiver.
To me, Burden is the easiest pick of anybody we've discussed so far. Like he is, as of now, the slot receiver for the Bears. And if that's the case, oh my God, could be absolutely ridiculously amazing.
And it's cheap.
Marquise Brown, Jack Besh, Christian Kirk.
That's your guy.
Yeah, it is my guy. Wide receiver 60.
Yes.
I think that's
great, incredible value.
Yes.
Marquise Brown.
It's a bench receiver. I don't think Christian Kirk's going to have a year where we go, oh, you got to start Christian Kirk.
You know what? I think it's fairly realistic to say he's going to have a season that's like Jacoby Myers or Khalil Shakir.
You want to know how that happens? Joe Mixon never plays like Joe Mixon, and they can't run the football, and they need to change up to the run game.
D'Amico Ryans, when I asked him at the owners' meetings, where do you see Christian Kirk? And he said the word slot about 20 times in a 2-minute answer.
Of course.
So playing in that role, I think, is fantastic for him. He's got to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, I think he could push for 14 points per game. He did that once his first year in Jacksonville. But how much will Higgins and Jalen Noel, be impactful for this offense? To me, it was a great landing spot for him because, clear path to targets. So it's a easy selection here just to take him. And I think to your point, Adam, like Khalil Shakir, I think Jacoby Myers' ceiling is a little bit higher just based on what their resumes have been.
Mm-hmm.
And still being most likely the number 1 receiver. Forget about number 1 target getter because we know that's Brock Bowers, but the number 1 receiver there for the Raiders. But in the Shakir comparison is great. Like the difference between those 2 guys may not be even in Shakir's favor at this point. Like you're talking about 12.5, maybe 13 PPR points per game. That should be something that Kirk can do very easily.
Christian Kirk was misused last year. He struggled last year. His ADOT was way too high.
Yep.
He also didn't play a normal snap share in a lot of the games. So like his snap share was the lowest it's been in Jacksonville, 70% for the season. His per route data pretty similar, but a 13.7 yard ADOT for Christian Kirk. That is ridiculous. So look at the way they used Stephon Diggs last year. He was terrific. Kirk's not going to be that good, but he's wide receiver 60. He's a great pick. Rashad Bateman, Adam Thielen. One more page of wide receivers and we'll end the show. Xavier Legate. So we got a couple of Panthers there. Kyle Williams just hasn't been playing with the ones enough.
He hasn't.
Mario Douglas. Oh, you've been there. What'd you say?
Mario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte have worked with the first team offense the most. I would imagine that when they open week 1 against Las Vegas, it'll be those 2 guys along with Diggs when they go to 3 receiver sets. Douglas is the slot receiver. Think about the past slot receivers that Josh McDaniels has had and how productive they've been. And Drake May absolutely attacked the middle of the field against Washington. And Washington has some good linebackers there. So Douglas absolutely in play as one of these late round picks. Boutte hasn't really hit the radar yet. Maybe if you're in like a mega deep league, you could tap on Boutte's name. But I don't see Kyle Williams being helpful. What's so funny?
Oh, nothing, Dave. Nothing.
Oh, okay.
You got another guy here. I know, Adam. This is one of your.
Wait a second. Dave, was that on
favorite-
purpose or no?
What was what on purpose?
Okay, I never know with Dave if it's shtick or not.
There's 3 guys in this range that to me are easy selections. One you've been very, I think, bullish on drafting. Adam is Romeo Doubs, seemingly playing a lot for the Packers, more so than Jaden Reed at this point, and a guy that Jordan Love has continued to lean on. So I don't think Doubs is worth overlooking, especially this late. Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be still a prime target for the Giants, and we'll see how that goes. Again, Cedric Tillman to me is so easy to draft here. So,
all right, Dave. Good job, Dave. You got everybody in the chat making booty jokes now. Way to go.
What do you mean? Why? Because his last name is Booty?
Come on, people. Grow up. All right, we'll finish at
It's a fantasy football show, not some weird locker room.
We'll finish at Romeo Doubs, wide receiver 69.
So Romeo, ha ha ha. Is the chat blowing up about that?
All right. Thanks so much for watching and listening, everybody. We've got Sleepers Breakouts and Busts next week. If you haven't heard the mailbag, it was a lot of fun. So you'll hear that tomorrow. For Dave, Jamey, and Heath and Thomas, I'm Adam. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. See ya.